On today's episode, I have one of the wildest comeback stories you'll probably ever hear, and me personally, one of the best examples of how the next conversation truly can change everything about your life. I want you to hear this story because it's just so cool, and he's also a Southeast Texas boy like me. Is Damon West. Damon, how you doing, man?
Jefferson, I'm good, man. It's good to finally meet. It's just weird that we're meeting like this. We were neighbors, but we've never met each other physically in person, right?
I know. So Damon is from a town that's probably, 20 minutes away? Roundabout? Oh,
I was...
Nederland, right?
Yeah, I'm in Nederland. Actually, I was in your part of the world this past weekend. My wife had me in a big lawn landscaping project in the biggest nursery in our area is in the town where you are, so... Yeah,
over in Silsbee.
I saw your signs everywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're trying to do it right. Everything is Southeast Texas. So if you hear my accent come out a little bit more, that's because I'm talking to Damon, and this is how we communicate. So brother, it's good to hear from you, right? Man. I know. Everybody's gonna go. That's what he really sounds like. That's exactly right. Damon, one of the reasons I want y'all to hear from Damon, aside from him just being such a cool guy, is that he has one of the best stories I truly think you'll ever hear. It's a path of redemption. It's a path of how you communicate can truly change your life. So Damon, I want to start with the question right now, and then I want to talk about your story, because I'm curious how this has changed in your life. Damon, as you exist right now, Damon West, how do you talk to yourself?
This is a great question, Jefferson. So, and I talk to this about people when I'm speaking. I don't listen to myself much anymore. And this is a technique I picked up when I was in prison, because I found out that the voice in my head sometimes was fear talking to me. And it's very hard sometimes to distinguish what's saying. Is it fear? Is it anger? What's going on inside your head? But I know that if I talk to myself, the voice that I'm hearing on the outside is the voice I want to project out there. And when I talk to myself, which is often, I'm telling myself things like, no, you can do this. You will do this. You've done big things before. One of the things I really try to do, Jefferson, when I talk to myself is I remind myself of the times that I succeeded. And I think this is very important in life. We have to remind ourselves of the times when we've had success, the times that we won. And that way we can tell ourselves, I've done hard things so I could do hard things again. It's one of the lessons I talk about. You ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption?
I have seen the movie. It's a great movie.
It's one of the best movies ever. But the last scene of the movie is, Andy Dufresne is, he's escaped prison. He's on the beach in Mexico working on his boat. The town in Mexico that he's in is Zihuatanejo, Mexico. And the reason why this Zihuatanejo place is important, because Andy visualized himself and he talked to himself while he was in prison about the town of Zihuatanejo. He was going to be there one day. And so what I like to remind people is that the hardest prison to do time in is the prison of your mind. Jefferson, I meet more people out here in the free world that are locked up than I ever did when I served time in a real prison, because more people are in prison by their thoughts, their things, and their prejudices than by steel bars and barbed wire and concrete combined.
So I want to make sure I tee this up the right way. What I hear you saying is, you know what, I don't know if I listen to myself, at least those negative thoughts. I focus on the things where I know I've had success in the past. So for our listeners right now, I want you in a nutshell to tell them this incredible story, starting from this guy in Southeast Texas, the road that has led you here, my friend.
Yeah, I think the best place to start this story is May 18th, 2009. On May 18th, 2009, Jefferson, I'm standing in front of a jury in Dallas. And the jury, these 12 men and women, this jury of my peers, they just sat through a 6-day criminal trial. And I'm on trial for my life at this point. And the crime that I'm standing trial for, Jefferson, is engaging organized criminal activity. It's a RICO case in the city of Dallas. I was the lead person of this whole organized crime ring. I was the lead meth addict. It was a bunch of other meth addicts breaking into people's homes to steal for drugs. None of the crimes were aggravated, meaning no one was ever home, so no one got physically hurt. But when I broke into people's homes, Jefferson, I didn't just steal their property, I stole their sense of security. And that's something I can't replace and I can't give back. So the jury hears the story of Damon West, this guy that grew up in Southeast Texas, grew up in a little town called Port Arthur. Great family, great athletic background. You know, in Texas, sports is everything. I grew up under the Friday Night Lights, went on to be a Division I starting quarterback at the University of North Texas, got hurt, and then got into drugs at that point after I got hurt in college. But I had some really good jobs. I was a very functional addict. I worked in Congress in D.C. I worked for a guy running for president. Then I worked on Wall Street in 2004 in Dallas. And that was the time that I was introduced to meth for the first time in 2004. And then it spanned from 2004 to 2008. I went from living on Wall Street, working on Wall Street, to living on the streets of Dallas. And whenever I was living on the streets, I became a drug addict. I became a criminal. I broke into people's homes. And Dallas SWAT finally took me down in 2008. And so the jury, after a 6-day criminal trial, listening to all the evidence, and the evidence was overwhelming. I was guilty of everything they said, Jefferson. The jury listened, and that's one of the biggest things in communication. They listened to the evidence well. And they came back after a 10-minute recess. I mean, deliberations were 10 minutes, Jefferson. You're a lawyer, man. You know what that means.
Yeah, I know what that. When they anybody listening, the jury, when they've made a decision, typically there's some kind of bell or a ding, and if they ding really quickly, that's when you know it's a landslide for somebody.
Oh yeah, and if you're the criminal defendant standing there on a first-degree felony, good. And when the jury came back so quickly, you know, Jefferson, you'll like this as a lawyer. I had 2 lawyers at my trial. I didn't have a court-appointed attorney. My parents cashed in their retirement to get me 2 paid attorneys, and one of my lawyers, a woman named Karen Lambert, she looked at me. She said, "Brace yourself. This is going to be bad." And I'm like, "How bad, Karen?" She said, "Well, you were gone for that brief 10 minutes. The jury sent a note into the judge from the jury room. They asked if they could give you life without parole." And I mean, I was stunned, Jefferson. I mean, these are property crimes, man. No one was ever hurt. And I was like, "What did the judge say?" She said, "Well, no, you can't give him life without parole, but you can give him life." And that is exactly what the jury did, Jefferson. They gave me a 65-year sentence for engaging in organized crime. And in Texas, 65 years is life. Anything over 60 is considered life in Texas.
This episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. I love Cozy Earth because I use their products. If you're somebody like me and you use bamboo sheets on your bed, you know exactly what I'm talking about when the summer gets hot. Down here in Texas, it is so scorching hot and humid. And there's one thing that helps keep me cool at night, and it's the sheets from Cozy Earth. They're on our bed right now. You can go to cozyearth.com/Jefferson and use the code Jefferson for 40% off. Use the code Jefferson. That's cozyearth.com/Jefferson. Use the code Jefferson for 40% off. Even if it's hot at night, you can use those sheets to keep you cool and most of all, cozy.
The jury gave me 65 years that day on May 8th.
And how old were you at this time?
33 years old. Yeah, I was 33 years old. I was arrested when I was 32 in the summer before by SWAT, and then 33 when I got sentenced to life in prison. And right after the trial was over, my mom and my dad get a real brief visit with me behind the glass. But my mom makes me make this promise that I won't get into one of these Aryan Brotherhood type gangs, that I won't get any tattoos. She said, "You come back as the man that we raised, or don't come back at all." And I don't know how I'm going to do this, Jefferson, but I run into this old guy in Dallas County Jail, this old guy named Muhammad. And it's right before the prison bus comes to pick me up to serve my sentence. And he told me this story. He said, "I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water." And he said, "You're going to have 3 choices how to respond in this pot of boiling water. You can be like a carrot that goes in hard but becomes softened by the water. You can be like an egg that goes in with the soft inside but becomes hardened once in the water. Or you can be like a coffee bean that changes the pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee." He said the coffee bean's the change agent. He said it's the only thing that changes the water. The power's inside the coffee bean to change the water around the coffee bean. And the last words he said to me as the prison bus was getting ready to come get me, he said, "Be a coffee bean." And Jefferson, that's what I had to do. I had to figure out how to become that coffee bean inside of one of the toughest environments possible, a Texas level 5 maximum security prison. And prison was a baptism by fire. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. The first 2 months was violence, because that's what prison's about. It's about violence.
Now, the Mohammed, he was there, talked to you at county jail,
Yeah.
right before you actually go to prison.
Yeah, this is in Dallas County Jail. He was in there on a parole violation. I didn't know much about the guy, and it's not an environment where you ask a lot of questions. He said he was in there on a parole violation, and he actually leaves county jail before the prison bus comes to get me. So,
and he's a prisoner too. Or, I mean, yeah, he's in county jail too.
He's in county jail too. So it's just brief encounter with people in life. But Jefferson, there's a real big story. There's a real big lesson there, and it's that you have to be receptive to all the messengers in life. You have to be willing to listen to the people around you, because you never know what the messenger's message is. And the messengers don't always look like us. They don't come from the same background as us. They don't have the same shared experiences. But that's where the power in the message is. And so I listened to Muhammad's message. I went to prison, transformed myself inside that prison. I became that coffee bean. And one of the things I had to do, Jefferson, that's germane to the conversation we're going to have today, is I had to become the best communicator possible in a world where people weren't always used to communicating like I grew up, because I stood out in prison. There weren't a lot of people with a background like mine, a pedigree, if you will, of being college educated, college quarterback, worked on Wall Street. These are not what you find in a state prison, maybe federal prison system, but state prison, it's the streets, man. But one of the things I did when I was in prison is I looked around and I was observant. People have asked me before, if you could have one superpower, what would it be? And I tell them all the time to be able to listen with clarity. Because when you can listen to what people are telling you, then people feel like they've been heard. And everybody wants to feel like they've been heard, Jefferson. And once someone feels like they've been heard, they feel like they're part of something bigger than them. And they feel like they're part of a team. And when you can create this team atmosphere around you, anything is possible, because we're all moving in the same direction with the same motion. So when I was in prison, I looked around and I'm watching these guys, and I learned about this thing called servant leadership. Servant leadership is helping other people reach their goals, helping to raise other people to a different station of life. So one of the things I did when I was in there, I started a reading class. I taught guys how to read and write. I started educating men around me, getting ready for the GED test. So if they ever get out of prison, they'd be a better husband or a better father one day. I taught guys the importance of having a healthy community. And I believe healthy communities, Jefferson, are when we all come together. We put our talents on the table. We say, this is what I can do. If anybody can use this talent, let me know. And eventually, guys were all working in the same direction. And in 2015, I came up for my first parole review. Now, for everybody listening, parole is pretty much the only way out of prison. It's a chance to get out. It doesn't mean you're free, but it means you're free to go from the confines of a prison, and you report to a parole officer out in the free world where everybody else lives. Now,
at this point in time, how long had you been in prison?
7 years and 3 months when I came up for my first parole. And the reason why, and people always want to know this, if you had a life sentence, why did you get to come up for parole so early? And it's because Texas has two different classifications of crimes. They have aggravated crimes where someone is physically hurt, and they have non-aggravated where there is no physical victim. And that's the class that mine in. I was in the latter, the non-aggravated class of crimes. And those offenders come up for parole earlier because they're not violent criminals. And so in 2015, the parole board comes to visit me from Huntsville. And, the lady from parole called me in. She had my file in front of her. It was about an inch thick, and it's everything about you. It's your whole life, every arrest, every felony. And, she was flipping through the pages of that file for about 20 seconds, Jefferson. She slammed the file shut. She pushed it away. She said, Mr. West, we don't see a lot of people like you come through the system. She said, you had it all.
I can imagine.
Yeah. She said, you had every advantage, every privilege, and every opportunity over everybody else your entire life. She said, but you blew through all of those privileges. You became a drug addict. You became a criminal. You became a thief. A jury in Dallas gave you life in prison for the things you did. But instead of letting that license define you, you changed yourself inside this prison, Mr. West. And she said, there's no doubt about the change you made to yourself. So congratulations on that. She said, but what got our attention, the reason why we're here today, is you didn't just change yourself inside this prison. You changed the entire prison around you. One man changed an entire prison. So she says, I have one question for you today that determines whether or not you go home or you stay in prison. And your life literally depends on your answer. She said, if you could be remembered for being anything in life, anything at all, she said, tell me what that would be, but give it to me in just one word. Go. Jefferson, I didn't have to think a lot about that answer. I'd been living that answer the whole time I was in prison, and my answer to her that day was useful. I said, I just want to be useful. Because, Jefferson, I think every human being wants to feel useful. We all want to have value in life. And that's one of the things I learned by being a good listener is I listened to how people told me in prison that they want to be useful again. And that's what I told this lady that day. I said, I just want to be useful. And I can be useful inside this prison, or I could be useful in the free world. And on November 16th, 2015, 7 years, 3 months, and 18 days after I started serving my sentence, I walked out of a Texas maximum security prison. Now, I'm not a free man at this point in the story in 2015 because I've got a little more time.
You're still on parole, right?
I'm on parole till 2073, so I got a little more time. I'm 40,
just a little more time.
As of this recording, Jefferson, I'm 49 years old. I got 48 more years left, so I crossed the halfway mark, man. I'm halfway there, brother.
There you go. That's awesome. Now, the sentence you had was 65 years, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and that is the whole basis, I know, of your upcoming book, which I'm very excited about, which is 6 dimes and a nickel, right? Do I have the slang right there?
Yeah, you would do really well in prison, but do it from the side you're doing
probably,
as a lawyer. No, you're a good communicator.
I probably wouldn't.
6 dimes and a nickel is prison slang for 65 years. Every 10 years is a dime, every 5 years is a nickel. And it was actually Muhammad that first said that to me the day I got back from my trial. And I was just exhausted after 6 days of trial. And he was like, man, brother, I saw that they gave you 6 dimes and a nickel. And,
6 dimes and a nickel.
Once I got out of prison, I thought that was a pretty cool term. But, man, when you're in prison, 6 dimes and a nickel is not pretty at all, brother.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, you travel all over the world, I know right now, speaking and spreading this mission and the whole moral of the coffee bean, right? That's you're known in the speaking circles, and anyone listening, you probably have heard Damon's whole message of being the coffee bean, meaning be the change agent that changes the water, that spreads, and how you communicate and live your life. That's going to change the people and community around you.
Correct. And you have become, I've watched you in the last 3 years become a coffee bean because before you the term, but I mean, I'm watching these videos from this lawyer that lives down the street from me in this car, and I'm watching it ramp up. But you're changing the world. You're using the power inside you to change the world around you. And so many of us out there are coffee beans. And, but the story and the message of the coffee bean, it really took off. But Jefferson, when I first got out of prison, there weren't a lot of places for me to share that story. And I mean, I found out really quickly, you can't just go knock on the door of a high school and say, I just got out of prison, I want to talk to your kid.
Just got out of prison. Still have a lot of years of parole left. Can you let me in?
No, can I talk to your kids? But when I first got out of prison, I was living in my parents' spare bedroom in their house in Port Neches, Texas. And I lived there for 2 years in their spare bedroom. And in that spare bedroom, there was a mirror in there. Just happened to be there when I moved in. A little vanity mirror my mom had in there. So every night for 2 years, Jefferson, I practiced my presentation in front of that mirror. I get in my reps. Here's another thing, another lesson to take away. I believe that anything you want to be good at in life, you got to practice that in life, right? There's no such thing as an overnight success. I would wager that the videos that you shoot from your car, they're not all first takes, are they?
Not all of them.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, because you have to practice that. Sometimes you need a rep or two to get better at it. And that's what I was doing, Jefferson, for 2 years, just practicing in front of that mirror, getting myself ready for the right opportunity. And I believe the right opportunity would be the world of college football because I played Division I college quarterback. But the problem was it was 20 years since I took my last snap. The coaches don't know me and I don't know them. So the date is January 11th, 2017. I've been out of prison 14 months at this point. I work at the Provost Humphrey Law Firm in Beaumont, Texas, right down the road from you, man. And I'm a paralegal at one of the most prestigious firms in our area. And I get a phone call from a friend in Houston. He works in the Houston media. Houston is 90 miles from where we live. And he said, man, get to Houston right now. It's the Bear Bryant Coach of the Year award. They're going to name the best college football coach in America. He said the 8 best coaches in the country in this room right now. I've got an extra press pass. I'll sneak you in. So Jefferson, I drive the 90 miles from Beaumont to Houston. He sneaks me in the back door at Toyota Center. And I go into this room, and there's 8 coaches in the room. It's big-time coaches, USC, Wisconsin, Penn State, PJ Fleck. And I shake these coaches' hands. I give them my pitch, and every one of them shoots me down. In 1 hour, I got 7 no's from 8 coaches in the room. That's a no every 8 minutes, brother. I'm standing in the corner of the Toyota Center. I'm licking my wounds. I'm feeling sorry for myself. And the voice in my head, to go back to your first question, the voice in my head is screaming at me, go home. The voice in my head says, you don't belong in this room. The voice in my head calls me an imposter. And I bet everybody listening to this podcast right now knows the imposter voice. We've all felt it before. But that's when past experience kicked in, and I started talking to myself that night in the corner, 10 feet from the door, pumping myself back up, and I reminded myself of the times that I won. Damon, you survived prison. This is not as bad as prison. Prison was way worse than this. You've won before.
Yeah.
You're going to survive tonight. The last coach is going to tell you no, and then you go home. So I stalked Dabo Swinney around the room, the guy that just beat Alabama 2 nights before for the national championship, the head